guys in the dark.
I'm a female, and the story I'm about to share with you happened almost 10 years ago. At the point, I was 17 years old. Like most teenagers my age, I was content to lock myself away in my room with my laptop and headphones. In autumn of that year, my parents went up north for the weekend. We live in Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula is famous for its scenery. I was left with the house to myself for the entirety of the weekend, and thought nothing about it. I enjoyed my privacy and didn't mind being alone. Let me tell you about the house and where we lived. Our house is very old, and a modest dwelling, 2 floors and a basement. All the bedrooms are on the first floor, since the second floor is unfinished. The house itself is about 8 miles from the nearest town. The backyard is pretty large, with an even larger cornfield stretching out for acres, separating the property from the lake onto the other side of the trees. The cornfield stretches partially around the house, creating a wall between our house and the neighbors to the east. It wasn't isolated by any means. There are 5 houses very close by, 1 on each side and 3 across the street. A local hunter, a farmer, a retired couple, a construction worker, and the local preacher were the people that I called neighbors. It's a quiet road, little traffic, and only the occasional coyote howl to disrupt the night. A nice, calm place to live. It was day 2 of my weekend alone. It was a chilly evening, so I shut my window and locked it before I huddled up on my bed with my laptop. I've always been a big fan of urban legends, especially legends that have some truth woven into the tale. Truth always makes a good story better, and makes a scary story all the more frightening. That night I had no idea that I was about to take part in my own scary tale. While I was zoning out on my laptop, watching horror videos and reading stories online, I heard an odd noise over my headphones. I pulled one speaker away from my ear and focused on the sound. The sound was coming from my window. My bedroom is a corner bedroom, and as a result, I have 2 windows. One window facing my neighbor to the west, and the second window faced the backyard. It was the second window that had the strange noise. At first I thought leaves and loose branches were getting blown against the screen, since it was fall and the weather in Michigan could get pretty harsh and unpredictable. But my reasoning didn't quite fit with the sound. It wasn't a banging or a rattling. It was like metal wires snapping. I removed my headphones and used my laptop screen as a light to see where I was walking without putting a glare on the window's glass. The curtains and blind beneath were drawn, preventing anything outside from being able to see inside. I was nervous about looking outside. I was alone, and I had no idea what was going on. I hugged my wall as I slipped my fingers under the curtains and slowly and carefully pulled down one of the blinds so that I could look outside. There, standing in the darkness outside of my window, was a person holding a knife, cutting at my screen. My heart skipped a beat as my blood ran cold. My instincts told me not to make a sound and stay out of sight. I slid down my wall and crawled on my hands and knees to my cell, sitting on the small table next to my bed. I called 911 and whispered everything to the person on the other line. I told them someone was outside my window, and he had a knife, and that I was alone. The operator stayed on the line with me, kept reassuring me that the police were on the way. I could hear my screen being cut wide open. I kept telling her that I wanted to run, but she insisted that I stay and didn't make a sound. Suddenly, the snapping of the screen wires being cut stopped. I listened, and I almost screamed in fear when I heard a new sound. The knife was digging at the wood frame of the window, and the man was trying to pry it open from the outside. The motion light in the backyard suddenly flashed on, just seconds before the red and blue lights of the arriving police car showed through the other window. I listened carefully and heard someone running from the car to the backyard. I could also hear their radio clicking on and off as they checked the area. A loud knock at the front door made me jump. I heard a man call out for me, identifying himself as a cop. Still scared, I opened up my bedroom door and crept down the hall. I peeked into the living room and didn't see anything. The knocking persisted, and again the cop identified himself. I peeked through the window and front door, saw him standing there, his eyes still checking the yard. I flung open the door and almost pulled the cop inside my house, just so happy to see someone else. He asked if I was okay, and if I could give a description of the man that I saw. I couldn't. He was wearing all black and had a hood pulled up which shrouded his face. All I could do was describe the large hunting knife that he used to cut open my screen. His partner joined him on the front porch and told us that he didn't see anyone in the area. I kept insisting on what I saw, and they of course believed me, since the patrolling cop saw the damage on the screen. The cops did a second sweep of the property and made sure every single window was secured and that the doors were locked and the garage was secure. Before leaving, the cops told me that they would keep a patrol car in the area, but they were confident that whoever I saw wouldn't be back. They just figured that it was some teenager who was trying to break in through my window and got scared when he saw the police car arrive. I thanked them and proceeded to double-check the locks for myself. I wanted to call my mom, but I knew my parents were already on their way home and would be back by morning. Unable to go back into my room, I chose to sleep on the couch in the living room and tell my parents as soon as they walked into the front door. About an hour later, after I finally was able to relax and started to drift off to sleep on the couch, I heard a loud bang against my back door. I sat straight up, looked through the kitchen, and to the back room that leads to the back door. Bang! This time I knew I was in danger. I grabbed my cell and dialed 911 again. This time I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a large knife from the butcher's block and huddled on the floor against the counter and the cabinets. I pressed the phone to my ear as the operator, a man this time, continued to talk to me so that I didn't feel alone. I gripped my knife tighter and began mentally trying to psych myself up. If this man managed to get in, would I be able to defend myself? He had a knife. Maybe that's why I grabbed one too. But I didn't know anything about him. How tall he was. How strong he was. Did I even stand a chance? I heard the banging again. I heard the wood on the door from the frame crack. The old door was locked on by a chain. One more hard kick would surely break the door down, and then I didn't want to think about it. I prepared for the final bang, for the door to give in, and for that man to attack me when I heard a voice yelling over the banging noise. "Get on the ground! Drop the knife!" "Oh, thank God," I said out loud. "The cops are here." The operator on the line, who had been speaking to me throughout the entire ordeal, continued to try and calm me down. I listened to the cop order the man to drop the knife over and over again, but I just knew that the crazy bastard wasn't going to listen. Then another bang, but it wasn't from someone kicking the door. It was from someone firing a gun. It was silent, and time seemed to just stand still. A gentle knock on the door drew my attention. The same cop as before was once again identifying himself at the front door. I told the operator a cop was at the door and then hung up. I opened the front door. The knife was still in my hand. The cop saw it, and very calmly suggested that I put it down. My hand was gripping the knife so tightly that my knuckles were white, and my fingers were cramped. When I dropped the knife, the cop escorted me from the front door to his car, which was parked on the side yard. Under the motion lights of the backyard, I could see his partner standing over the body of the man in black. I could see his knife lying on the ground just inches from his hand, and even from the distance, I knew there was blood on the blade. The man himself looked like he had been dead for weeks. His hood had fallen from his face, revealing it to the night. He was white and impossibly pale. His skin was unnaturally aged with heavy wrinkles and lots of discoloration. His hair was long, stringy, and blonde. His eyes, which were still open, were sunken into his skull. I was taken to the police station to deliver a statement and to ensure that there were no other attackers on my property. When I told them everything I knew to the interviewing cop, another cop walked into the room with a file in his hands. He whispered something to the first cop and handed them the file. I asked the cop if they knew who the man was, and he nodded. I asked to know who he was and what he wanted. At first the cop didn't want to tell me, but I just needed to know. I managed to coax the cop into telling me, and part of me wishes that I just let it go. The man was a chronic junkie who abused any and all drugs that he could get his hands on. He was also a violent schizophrenic with bipolar disorder. He used to live in the area until he was finally locked up in a mental hospital about 20 years prior. The act that got him locked away all those years was a result of his attempt to burn down a local church, declaring that he was the true Son of God, and that all religious figures, which were priests and ministers, were false prophets and tools of Satan. The cop figured that he was trying to break into my house because he thought that that was where the preacher lived. He had the wrong house and would have killed me anyways, if he had gotten inside at least. After a moment of letting that sink in, I asked why the cops didn't see him the first time that I called. His answer sent shivers up my spine. And now I never look at my backyard the same. He told me that the man had hidden in the cornfield the first time and was watching the house from between the rows. He had never left. He was always there, watching the house and waiting for the police to leave. He truly was crazy, and I'm glad that he won't be around anymore. About 3 months ago, I was babysitting my younger siblings while my parents were out. It was around 8 p.m., and everyone in the living room was watching TV, while I was in my room folding the laundry. My room is in the back of the house. While I was putting the clothes away, I hear a knock at my window. Without thinking, I open up the blinds a little bit, and instantly my soul left my body when I was face to face with a pair of wide hazel eyes staring back at me. I let out an ear-piercing scream, ran into the living room to grab my siblings, and take them to my parents' room to hide. While my siblings were confused and asking why I was screaming, the back door was practically shaking, as I could hear someone banging on the living room windows. My sister was already on the phone with the police. My brothers were hiding under my parents' bed while I was in the hallway with a long kitchen knife trying to somehow protect them. Minutes later, the banging and shaking stopped. I could hear 2 people jumping the front yard gates. The police arrived 5 minutes later and took our statements. After that incident, my parents got a dog from the local shelter named Buddy, whom we love very much. 2 weeks later, I was alone at my house with the dog getting ready for school, since school for me started at 10 a.m., because the underclasses were taking the state exams, and high school seniors, like me, came to school later. I was feeding Buddy when I hear the front gates shaking, then footsteps walking quickly next to the house, and someone trying to open up the back door. Instantly, Buddy's ears picked up, and he'd been growling and barking like crazy. I was about to call the police when the person fled. Unfortunately, the police never caught the person, and I soon forgot what had happened. Then a week ago, someone broke into my dad's car and stole the radio. Yesterday I was up at 7 a.m. cleaning the living room, and decided to have some light in the house by opening up the curtains. When sometime later, I see a truck slowly approaching my house. I hid behind a bookshelf so that the driver couldn't possibly see me through the living room windows. The truck's windows were really tinted, and I felt the driver's eyes staring directly at me, as if he knew where I was in the house. He sped off quickly after that. I honestly don't know what's going on, and I hope that it doesn't escalate any further. I live in a fairly secure area. I have 2 dogs. One is a large Doberman, and the other one is a poodle. I was home alone as my parents were out for the weekend. Our dogs bark a lot, as they are very protective, and the neighbors hated when the dogs barked. Would often get notes telling us to keep the dogs quiet. One of the more threatening ones was that they would hurt the dog if he wouldn't be quiet. So, my parents had them taken to a dog kennel to avoid any complications. I was home alone playing video games and watching movies for the weekend. It was the night after they had left, and I was playing a video game. I think that it was Rainbow Six Siege. I was playing with a few friends. I had my microphone on, and I was playing with my window open. My friends kept telling me to stop making a squeaking noise. I questioned what he meant. My friend said that it was a loud banging. I removed my headphones, and that's when I heard the sound of something slamming into the gate. I peered out of the window. It was a tall, stocky man with a black hood on, looking down, slamming his body into the fence. As the fence was weak and wood, it was splitting. I decided to call the police, and then my parents, but I decided to stay near the window, still watching the man. I was talking to the 911 operator. The operator told me to lock myself in a room, get out of sight, and that a police officer was on the way. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to continue watching the man. He finally broke the wooden gate off its hinges, but he didn't enter. He strapped something around his shoulder, and upon further inspection, only from the moonlight, I saw a hunting rifle strapped to his back. That's when I went and hid underneath a bed. I listened out for anything until a loud shatter broke the silence. which was the back door smashed, followed by footsteps entering the house. The intruder sounded like he was searching for something. He was creeping up the stairs until the sound of the police sirens flooded my ears. I made the stupid decision of bolting, trying to escape the house. I started to get to the stairs and turned the corner. I was greeted by a large man, following the description of the man trying to break in. The man gripped his neck, and the police sirens got louder. The police were knocking on the door. He was quickly losing his breath because the man was strangling himself. The cloth covering his face slipped down to reveal my neighbor. I was nearly out of breath. He had let me go, gripped his rifle, and aimed it at me. He pulled the trigger, but it didn't fire. The dumbass left the safety on. The police kicked down the door and tased the man. The man was found and was charged with breaking and entering and carrying an unlicensed firearm. I'm thankful that the safety was on, and this could have ended very badly. I later went to my Xbox, told my friend what had happened, and that I almost died. They were very concerned for my safety.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.